Hi everybody, and welcome to Module 3 for Media Design. I'm excited to jump into this week. We're specifically going to be talking about media for print. Before we dive in, I want to apologize for not having a video for last week. To give you a quick update, the last few weeks I have been working with the Walt Disney World Company down in Orlando, specifically on a new partnership that they have called the NBA Experience. So they've partnered with the NBA and Disney, and they're creating a brand new opportunity for fans down in Orlando, specifically in the Disney Springs area. So Disney Springs is formerly known as the Downtown Disney, but it's not a theme park. It is accessible to anybody in the public. You don't have to be visiting Disney. You don't have to be staying on Disney property. You can come down and visit Disney Springs and now attend this brand new NBA experience that is opening in August 12th to be specific. It is a ticketed experience, so fans can sign up, register, buy a ticket to go into this experience. But what it specifically is the fans' opportunity to measure their skills against some of the NBA greats. So it is a quote-unquote combine for the NBA, but you as the fan get to see what your dribble looks like compared to Steph Curry's. You get to see a 360 photographic view of how you dunk the basketball. A lot of different skill sets that you get to experience and see how they compare to different members of the media or members of the NBA. So it's pretty cool all around. Another element is a statistician area. So you get to go over and see statistics from hundreds of thousands of members of the NBA. So members from the past and current NBA players. That's updated on a daily basis. So throughout the course of the NBA season, there might be a game that's happening, and those game statistics are going to be updated and put right into some of the technology that they have in this interactive experience. So it's pretty cool. Another thing that they have is a trivia section. So you can go in, if you're a trivia buff for the NBA, you can go in and test your skills. Or if you're looking to learn more about the NBA, this would be a great place for you to go. But you get to learn all of these different elements or learn all of these different things about the NBA in that particular experience. And then finally, there's a merchandise area that you can go in, specific NBA merchandise for all of the teams, their international teams. NBA Cares is a portion of it too, which is their community outreach. There's specific Disney merchandise as well. So a lot of cool stuff that you can customize, that you can get just for you, which is pretty cool. So that's where I have been the last couple weeks. So I wanted to share that with you because there's a lot of great stuff that I've had the chance to learn and experience. So not all of it will transcend specifically into this course, but I will be sure to use a lot of what I learned in the experiences that I had in the fall when I teach the sport marketing class. So that is a shameless plug to sign up for the sport marketing class because I will be teaching it this fall, and you can bet that we will be talking about the NBA experience that I had the last couple weeks. So let's dive into this week. We are talking specifically about print media and a lot of different versions of print media. So the first thing I'm going to chat and clarify is we're going to look at it a few different ways. The first way we're going to talk about it is as if you were a member of the media, so specifically sport journalism. So what does sport journalism look like in the form of print? So how do you write a column? What is a press release? What is an editorial piece? How do you create all of those specific articles that are for print? Now, today, a lot of those articles that you would quote unquote see in a newspaper are available digitally. So it does kind of cross over into the digital realm, but for the sake of kind of navigating and understanding all the information, we're just going to look at it this week, specifically in the form of print, and understand that, yes, it can technically be published online. But what are all those different types of writing styles? And if you are a member of the media or the sport media and you are a sport journalist, what is the protocol? What is the etiquette? How do you go about getting your information? We looked last week at the role of a public relations manager and how public relations managers or directors work specifically in professional sports, or they might work in nonprofits or startups. You might have a sport information director at the amateur level. If you think of all of the farm systems for our professional leagues, there might be sport information, public relation directors within those organizations. But if we look specifically into the collegiate sport world, you're going to find that particular role named a little bit differently, and it's going to be called the sport information director. They have a variety of different responsibilities, but one of the responsibilities that they have is working with the sports journalists so that they can cover the sports teams. So they're going to look at specifically the relationships that they need to develop. They're going to try to figure out the types of articles or columns that they need to be preparing themselves to cover their own department sports teams. But then how do they get that external sport journalism coverage from members of the media within their community or nationally? So that's the job of a sport information director. They're going to be the unpaid media connoisseurs. So separate from what paid advertisements or paid media might be, that would be the marketing director's job. That would be somebody that might create a piece of media that's an advertisement. So not media as it's referred to as journalism, but media more for advertisements. That's going to be a marketer's job. We'll briefly touch on that next week when we talk about digital media. But again, if you want to take a more in-depth look at it, you got to take my marketing class in the fall. But you can see how all of this intersects and how it still is connected and really integrated within the sport world. There's no silos. People don't work individually. There's a lot of crossover within the sport industry, regardless of what level you're at. So the sport information director is also going to be responsible for creating a piece of media that in the past was typically printed. Now, more commonly, it is showed in a digital format because you might pull it up online, but you can still purchase the books and you might be able to print it off if you were a member of the media, and up in the press box, that would be the original form of it. And you could probably still get a traditional form, although more commonly digital. Anyway, the piece of media that I'm referring to is a media guide. So a media guide is going to be all of the statistics, all of the information about the players, all of the information about the organization in one guide. And that guide is what media members will use to write their stories, to create all of their content. So if there's a statistic, if there's a record that's been broken, if there's something specific that a member of the media might need to use while they're creating a piece of sport journalism, they're going to reference a media guide. And that media guide is created by a sport information director. So that's why we're using it as an example of print media, because it is a long form written piece of print or piece of material, piece of media that sport information directors have to keep very specific details on. They have to keep very specific record so that it can be used to share with members of the media so that they can then use it for all of the journalism pieces that they're creating, articles that they're publishing, statistics that are going out. So you can read all about media guides and how those are created. Now, let's say, for example, you are a member of the creative side of media. So you're not writing media in forms of journalism, but you're going to create something artistically for a billboard, for a magazine, for something that you might visually see that would be quote unquote print. Something that you're going to follow is referred to as a style guide. And the style guide is going to be all of the brand guidelines for how you would create that piece of media. And what do I mean by branding? So branding is how a particular organization defines their brand, how they specifically have their logo, what are their colors, what is their typography. Typography is the type of font, the size of font, the kerning, which is the space between the font. All of those details for what makes the brand what it looks like visually is referred to branding. Branding is a huge topic. Another plug, if you want to learn more about branding, take the sport marketing class in the fall. But in general, branding for what we're going to talk about this week is going to be the visual components of print media. So if you're going to create an advertisement for a billboard, there are guidelines you're going to follow if you're going to create that billboard. For example, the Detroit Tigers want to create a billboard that you're going to see on the side of the road. If they're working with an advertising company or potentially creating it in-house, they're going to use the specific logo. Now, the logo has guidelines. They can't turn it green. They can't turn it purple. They can't decide that they're going to write Tigers out and claim that that's the logo, or they're going to use it in a different font. There's specific guidelines that need to be followed. Otherwise, they're breaking their style guide rules, and they're breaking what is acceptable for that particular brand. And organizations don't like to do that, because as a member of the community that's consuming that piece of media, I visually identify with those brand guidelines, whether I know it or not. Subconsciously, I've been trained to understand what those brand guidelines are. And I have the expectation that the brand is going to follow that. Otherwise, this would be a long stretch, but perhaps I don't recognize them as the Detroit Tigers, and I think they are the Oak Park Tigers. I know that's a little bit of a stretch, but that concept for smaller organizations is really critical, that you follow brand guidelines, because if you're trying to establish a consumer base and you're not following your guidelines, you're going to have your consumers scattered all over the place, and you haven't trained them for how to recognize the visual cues of your brand and therefore consume the media and the message that you're trying to share with them. So remember, we talked last week about the message behind media, and how media more often than not is trying to sell something. If you are not following those style or brand guidelines, people are going to miss out on whatever the message or thing you're trying to sell. So it's really important that you follow style guidelines. The other thing that we're going to talk about this week is storytelling within sport. And I chose to include this within print media so that we can talk about this first. It applies to a lot of different forms of media, but I wanted to talk about it this week so that you understand it's relevant regardless of the type of media that you're working with. So storytelling within media, specifically within sport media, is one of the most impactful things that a creator of media can do. If you think of all of the different forms of media that you consume, so think all the way back a couple weeks ago when I asked you how you consume media the most. More often than not, whatever platform that you chose and shared, there was some form of storytelling that is within that platform. So storytelling is what advertisers, marketers, member of the media use to evoke emotion, to share information with you so that you go back within your childhood, you remember an experience that you had, or they're educating you on something for that particular athlete's story and why the product that they're using has helped them within their story. People are drawn to stories. They're connected to stories. If you look at the Olympics, there is storytelling throughout all of the media that is shared throughout the Olympics. If you think of March Madness and all of the media and storytelling that's behind March Madness, if you could think of the Super Bowl and all of the media that is shared leading up to the Super Bowl and the storylines behind it, that creates an emotional connection between the consumer, the fan, and the product. And they're trying to sell you or bring you in so that you become a fan, you become a follower, you become a supporter of that particular athlete, but of the overall brand and the overall concept of whatever piece of media that you're consuming. So there is a lot that we are covering this week. I think I covered everything. I'm just looking back at all my notes. The last thing that we're going to cover is composition of design. This is a little bit tough to kind of wrap your head around. It is very, there's 3 videos that I have. It's slow moving, but I really want you to press into those videos and understand that creating media is fun, whether you're a journalist or you are somebody that gets to create something that goes out on a phone or goes out on a television. It's a lot of fun, but there are foundations and elements that you have to know in order to create things that are going to be successful. So you don't just create a cool picture because it looks cool. There are specific elements behind the composition of design that makes it cool and makes it successful for what it's trying to do. What is it trying to do? It's trying to sell you something. It's trying to get you to buy into that brand, remember the product, whether you're going to go out and buy it right away or you're going to have a long-term recollection of that particular product or brand. So in order to be successful, you have to understand the foundation and the nuts and bolts before you can go and do the fun things like create a poster, create an advertisement, create a Facebook ad, throw something up on social media, take a photograph. All of those things are rooted in the composition of design. And I really want you guys to understand that before you go further throughout this course. Again, those videos are a little slow, but they're short. There's 3 of them. They're short and sweet, so you should be able to get through them pretty quickly. There's also a couple articles that you can read about specifically the composition of design. So a lot to cover this week. The overall foundation is media for print, but we do kind of go off in a lot of different directions just because I want you to understand a lot of things that are carried throughout the course of media design. So if you have any questions, again, do not hesitate to ask, whether it's for your assignment and your discussion, or it's just about any of the topics that we are covered. I'm here to help you. I'm here to be your advocate, to support you, to guide you, and to help you with all of your learning aspirations. So anything that I can do to help you, please reach out. I'm more than happy to be of assistance to all of you. So until then, if you need anything, you know where to find me. Otherwise, good luck with Module 3.